Um, and Wisconsin Assembly Speaker Robin Walsh neatly, if unintentionally, summarized nearly every aspect of Donald Trump's post-2020 election effort to somehow return himself to power, which he has no right to do. He, basically, Trump had stated that he would like, the people of Wisconsin to do something different, but Walsh said that that wasn't the case and that they were not going to do that. This is what he said he received a phone call from the former squatter. He was referring to a phone call from the former squatter that was made to him last week. Basically, I explained that it's not allowed under the Constitution. He has a different opinion, and he put the tweet out. It was actually a post on Truth Social, but we still get that. Now, Baltz's summary makes clear that he has now joined former Vice Squatter Mike Pence and a battery of other officials across the country. Trump wanted them to do something that they had no power to do, and so Trump disparaged them publicly. The situation in Wisconsin, however, is a bit more complicated than Trump's other ongoing efforts to somehow reverse the results of an election that he lost, and that's seen President Biden serve as president for 18 months, or a little bit longer. It's 20 months now. It derives from a recent decision from the state's elected Supreme Court that Trump's sycophants are now presenting as having invalidated the presidential election results in that state. It does not, and it could not, and as Walsh notes, this should be even obvious to the most Trump sycophantic observers. In early 2020, with COVID-19 beginning to kill thousands of people nationally, the Wisconsin Elections Commission issued a rule allowing election officials to use ballot drop boxes to collect ballots. The intent was, with changes in other states, it was to make it easier to vote without having to crowd into a small polling place and potentially risk spreading the coronavirus everywhere. The national effort to increase absentee or early voting quickly became a centerpiece for Trump's claims about potential voter fraud. Trailing in the polls, he resurrected his 2016-era claims that only fraud would cause him to lose the election, which wasn't the case. But with the new twist centered on early votes, his rhetoric helped fill a partisan split in how people voted in the November 2020 election. A split that ended up with helping his efforts to cast absentee ballots, votes that were often counted more solely as suspect. In recent months, the use of drop boxes to collect ballots has come under specific scrutiny, largely because of a roundly debunked film that was put out by Dinesh D'Souza, alleging a rampant yet somehow undetected scheme involving thousands of people to collect and submit ballots through drop boxes. Now, reporting from the Associated Press, it makes clear that there was no evidence of any significant fraud committed through the use of drop boxes, but D'Souza's film tailored neatly to argue that the election was stolen from Trump, which it wasn't, and it has spawned a cottage industry focused on drop boxes. Now, in Wisconsin, D'Souza's film claims 14,000 legal votes were cast in drop boxes, except that, as legislators pointed out during a March hearing in the state, even if D'Souza's conspiracy theory was true, which is not supported by any factual evidence, those ballots would have been legally cast anyway, since collecting and submitting ballots wasn't banned at that time. That hearing focused on testimony from True the Vote, the group that provided D'Souza the data for his film, and the group's head, Catherine Engelbrecht, that stated that they weren't alleging the ballots were illegal, just that the process was abused, which it wasn't. But enter the Supreme Court. A pair of Wisconsin voters had used the Wisconsin Election Commission, alleging that the commission had no right to allow the use of drop boxes and that it's doing so harmed them. The Supreme Court's conservative majority agreed. Now, thousands of votes have been cast via this unlawful method, which it wasn't unlawful, but thereby directly harming the Wisconsin voters, its opinion read. The illegality of these drop boxes weakens the people's faith that the election produced an outcome reflective of their will. Now, this is a remarkable assertion, certainly suggesting that because drop boxes were allowed and normal Wisconsin voters used them to vote, confidence in the election results were damaged. The decline in confidence, of course, stems from the robust after-the-fact effort to cast drop box voting as suspicious or prone to fraud, which the evidence simply does not support. The court's decision landed in the midst of an already effective effort in Wisconsin to somehow unwind the results of the 2020 election, results that again have not yet been shown to have been tainted with in any significant way. Even D'Souza's entirely invented 14,000 vote number is less than Biden's margin of victory in that state. That's in part because of a Republican-backed investigation into the election, and it was helmed by a conservative former member of the state Supreme Court that tried to undercut confidence in the results. Its report, which was released earlier this year, mostly alleged that mostly the alleged that the results were affected by efforts to increase the turnout. A weird reason is to try to reject how those voters voted. While the report didn't call for a decertification of the state's results, the former judge leading the effort, Michael Gableman, did. Gableman was found to be in contempt in June for not turning over required documents related to his probe. So once the Supreme Court decision dropped, there was a quick push to declare a much broader victory for Trump over Trump's opponents. That included Trump trying to persuade Assembly Speaker Bolster to certify the election, much as he had tried to persuade Pence to block submitted slates of electors on January 6, 2021. And when Voss declined to do so again because he had no power to do so, Trump basically attacked him on social media. It looks like basically he went on to say that I had basically he went on to attack Voss, but it's also worth considering the logic here. If the Supreme Court were tomorrow to declare that voting in polling places was for some reason unconstitutional, would Trump or anyone argue that votes cast by that method in 2020 should not count? Would the natural response be to recalculate election results to exclude those votes? Or would there be a recognition that most or all of those voters would simply have cast ballots some other way? That's setting aside the assertion that it's odd to decry illegal behavior when illegality was asserted only after the fact. If buying alcohol was made illegal tomorrow, the 21st Amendment repealed, would that mean that everyone who had a drink since 1933 engaged in criminal activity? The thing about Voss is that he's sympathetic to Trump's position. He's the one who hired Gableman in the first place, but even if he wanted to do what Trump asked, he can't. Now, even if Wisconsin, for some reason, did decide to change the 2020 election results, so fucking what? Biden would still not only have enough electoral votes to have win, he would still be president. There's no mechanism besides impeachment or the 25th Amendment for removing him from office, because neither is going to fucking happen. After Voss revealed Trump's recent call in which the former squatter continued to insist on this surreal scenario, Trump again took to his bespoken social media platform to make a political threat. So what's Speaker Voss doing on the Great Wisconsin Supreme Court declaring hundreds of thousands of drop boxes to be votes to be illegal? This is not a time for him to hide, but a time to act, he wrote. I don't know his opponent in the upcoming primary, but feel certain he will do well if Speaker Voss doesn't move with gusto. It is never Trump's fucking fault. His loss wasn't his fault, it was fraud. That all of the electoral votes certifying his loss were counted on January 6, 2021, it wasn't Trump's fault, it was Pence's, and Trump's failure to get Voss to do something Voss can't do in his own fault, somehow it's Voss's, even though this is all Trump's fault. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just as little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.